lot of my friends and like my closest people said that now I know you so much better because I read your book.
And it's
I'm
an
like,
extremely
oh my God,
uncomfortable
very
feeling.
uncomfortable.
It's a very uncomfortable
I
feeling.
felt so weird after I heard that. I'm like, no, please don't know me. Just unread it. Every time I got $1 for when I was called an overthinker, I would be a millionaire by now and I wouldn't have had to start passive income streams like this one.
But trust us, we're not overthinking girlies. In fact, I reckon others are perhaps just not thinking enough.
But don't worry, we've got you covered because we're here to think on your behalf on all the things that matter to you and to us with the girls who overthink.
With Girls Who Think, the
podcast.
podcast. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Girls Who Think podcast. I'm Niharika Nigam.
And I'm Simran Dudeja.
And today we have a super interesting topic to talk about. Today I want to touch upon the dark side of the creative pursuit. So the two of us have, of course, spoken extensively about our journey into the creative foray with our debut novels. And I want to ask you, Simran, taking the risk of actually pursuing your creative passions, was it worth it? And what really was the dark side of it all?
Wow.
Where we begin, right?
Diving straight into it.
Into it.
No filters, no segueing into it. Direct,
No
bam.
dance around
Tell
the
me, was it worth it?
Was it worth it indeed?
I think worth every penny, worth every sweat, blood, and tear, if I'm being dramatic or not. I think.
I love that instant answer, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was worth everything because I think in the end, it comes down to what you measure success with. And I was having this conversation with someone the other day. If you're in it for the money, if you're in it for the fame, if you're in it for those superficial things, then it's not going to be a very rewarding experience in the beginning.
But that's something I feel like a lot of people don't realize getting into it, right? Like I also have musician friends. I also have friends who are struggling models, struggling actors. We were struggling writers before we became published authors.
Yeah.
And even after that, I feel like
it's been a struggle in some way or the other.
It still is. And when people see it from the outside, they feel like, oh, the book itself was the big accomplishment. And that's what I thought it would feel like too. But once it actually happened, I realized that that's where the journey actually begins.
Correct.
And now you're a beginner in this new sphere, in this new industry. And what really happens after that, and everything that happened after that, everything that came after that was such a revelation to me, a nasty shock at times. But that's why I said I love when you say that it was worth every penny, because that was also how I felt about it. But it just, I mean, I came to that conclusion after I realized that I think that the rewards that I got out of it were extremely unexpected for me. They were unprecedented. But what I got into it for, did I find that? No, not necessarily. I think a lot of people get into creative streams like writing and all of that as a form of self-expression. They think that they'll suddenly be seen, they'll suddenly be discovered, they'll find fame, they'll find money. On all of those fronts, it was underwhelming to quite a degree for me. But I mean, there were so many unexpected joys that came along the way, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think going back to first principles, right, I think in this journey, I have discovered this very important framework which one should apply before taking on anything, and that is to find your why. This is something Simon Sinek talks about a lot. There's this very popular TED talk or some video where he talks about finding your why. And I think most of us stumble through life without finding why we're doing something. That we're doing, right? So I have a job that pays the bills. I have a job that makes me, gives me the professional career that I want. But I think writing for me has always been a way to express myself, to kind of find meaning in life, because I think deep down I'm a person who thinks too much, hence the name of the podcast, right? Girls Who Think. I've always been called an overthinker. I've always had this ability to really dive deeper into things and kind of make stories or make narratives, sometimes tear down old narratives, form new ones. And English has always been one of my favorite subjects, where I think I remember when I was going through the whole JEE preparation, which is this engineering entrance exam preparation. It was a really tough time where we used to study for 10 hours, go to coaching classes and all of that. I remember studying English was the time which was kind of like my break, because I knew I could
Yeah.
read a story and I could,
Mm.
analyze the character. I could understand what the character was going through, and I just felt so cathartic. Writing poetry was something that happened to me during that time when I was going through something. I was experiencing very uncomfortable emotion, I was experiencing uncomfortable situations, but creating art out of that situation was what kept me going, was something that made me, creating art out of discomfort was something that made me feel like this discomfort is worth it.
Yeah.
Going through this journey has some sense to it, right? It's
Yeah.
not useless. And I think that is why I write, to feel like all that I'm going through, all that I'm experiencing as a human, and given the fact that I am someone who experiences things on a slightly higher degree, like if there is a level 5 that someone's experiencing, I'll probably experience it to a 7.5, just because of the fabric of the person that I am. I think like I have
Yeah.
lesser thick skin and I have like thin skin. People say that grow have a thick skin, but I don't have a thick skin. I have very thin skin. So I experience too much, but writing about it, creating art out of my experience just makes me feel like this whole experience is worth it. And it's not just pain, and it's not just discomfort, and it's not just like, meaningless emotions. There's meaning to it. So that was my reason. I know I've like digressed a bit, but that was my reason to get into a creative field. And I think because I was able to achieve that, it feels like it's been worth every penny.
Yeah.
But again, coming back to things like monetary successes or fame or things like that, I think when it comes to that, then your creative pursuit also becomes anything like a normal career or a
Yeah.
normal ambition,
It takes the
right?
romance out of the art.
Yeah, so what I was saying is, if I attach a big ROI to this thing, if I attach a monetary ROI to it, or if I attach a fame ROI to it, it becomes like any other job or any other career where I'm expecting something out of it. And I think I want also my art to be this safe space where I can come back, where I want my art to be the safe space that I can come home to, and I do not expect a lot out of it. It is for me, it is nurturing my soul, and I think that's great. Whenever, if ever things are supposed to happen from a monetary and a fame perspective, I think they will. And I also know that if I want a lot of ROI from this creative pursuit, from this side hustle, quote unquote, I know that I have to take it like a main hustle. I know that I have to put in so much steam behind this activity, which I feel like at this point in my life, I'm not prepared to. I do not have the luxury to make my side hustle my main hustle and keep grinding it out without being paid for, say, 6 months, right? With the risk of maybe never making it, right? And losing those 6 months. So yeah, I think I am treating my side hustle as something that gives me joy. That's something on the side, and something I do for myself and for my soul to nurture it, instead of taking the pressure off making it something that gives me so much ROI. So I try to create that boundary, and I know it's very hard. I know it's very hard because oftentimes when you get into something, it's very human, it's very normal, and it's very like type A personality of someone to kind of start expecting returns immediately.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important to go back and realize why you're doing this. And this reminds me of this book called The Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. Elizabeth Gilbert is one of my favorite writers. She's also written Eat, Pray, Love, the famous book turned into a film. And she talks about the creative genius. It's like a magical force. It comes to you when it comes to you. You can't really will it. There's these tiny moments of magic that happen to you, and an idea comes to you, and then you start working on that idea and it turns into something bigger. I mean, that's how my debut novel happened to me. It was an idea, and then I started working on it. But I think if you put that pressure on the creative genius of giving you some return out of it, I think then again it becomes so transactional.
Yeah.
And it's not fair. It will give you when it has to, but you
Yeah.
gotta be patient, right? That's the
Yeah.
whole point of the creative pursuit. It's not like any other career where you go clock in 10 hours and you get a salary
Yeah.
in return. That is transactional. That's why you don't enjoy going to your job, right? Because it's a very transactional thing. This you enjoy because there's less expectation.
Yeah, but actually, I always say this whenever I've met people who really inspire me, whatever field they might be from, I feel like the mark of true genius is play. I mean, I as an individual may have several things that I love to do as creative pursuits. Like I may love to draw, I may love to dance, I do not, but I may love to write. I may have several creative pursuits that I enjoy. But the thing that I would be best at or the most natural at are the things where I am free enough to play, wherein I'm not caged by what should be happening as the rules or the protocol of the game, where I'm so in such enjoyment of that art that I am willing to bend the rules. I can be fluid with my movement in it. And I feel like that's where I would shine. And
what you're describing is the real definition of creativity, I feel.
Yeah,
Joy
exactly.
and play.
Kind of like
Fluid.
not really having as many creative blocks to the entire process of it, basically, right? The moment you take the play aspect out of it, it kills the genius of it also.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, so when I was writing my first novel, I remember on stage when the launch was happening, and it was happening with Chetan Bhagat, and he actually mentioned that his first book was his freest work. And he mentioned how every book after that, you kind of eventually start playing to the gallery. And at that point, I don't think I appreciated it as much. But now that my first book is out, it got republished eventually. It is now out as Joy of Missing Out. And, this I think is going to be my freest work ever. Because now, until I become really big in this space, I will be playing to the gallery. Because otherwise, a publisher won't pick my work up. And that's just the nature of commercialization of art, right?
Yeah.
If I wanted to just write for my catharsis, why isn't that manuscript just in my drawer? Why is it being published? But I mean, we know that there is a lot of reward to be gained outside of the monetary angle also. I mean, our interaction with readers, we both have gone through this process recently, and I mean, I feel like it made my craft so much better, kind of seeing how people receive the same book in different ways, how they internalize what I have written. It was my story up till they picked it up off the bookshelves, and then they made it their own. And how it resonates with them, it makes me a better human being, it makes me a more experienced human being, and it makes me a better writer, I feel. So, I feel like there was a lot of reward to be gained out of it. But having said that, till I become big enough that somebody is just going to purchase a book because it's written by Niharika and I will have to pay to the gallery so that a publisher picks my work up. And that's just how it is, unfortunate as it may be. And another thing, as you rightly said, right, like the audacity of expecting your first work to be a roaring success. Like, why should it be?
I love the word.
Yeah, why should it be? Because all the people in my mind that I was thinking of that, oh, but this book is working so well, this author is working so well, why is my book not raking in those numbers, etc. That author has written 40 books before I even entered the scene. Like, they deserve that success. Success is oftentimes a function of also volume. Absolutely. You've had that many misses to be able to have
all
that
these
hit.
many times that finally the 10th time will be a success,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
You try, fail.
You have kept evolving. You have kept molding your work into something that's going to work because you know what hasn't worked.
Yeah.
So I did expect that. I thought I'm going to be the new author on the block and this is going to be it and it's going to be life-changing. And it was incredible for my self-confidence just to have a book out there because I always thought it's going to happen, and it happened, and I made it happen. I met readers, I had wonderful reviews. I've had all of that in a very, very small bit, of course. But, of course, there's a lot of growth. And why shouldn't there be? I'm just one book old.
And one shouldn't discount that. And I love how you brought it up because I think it's very easy to miss because, again, right, I think most people are in it in any form of pursuit for either the fame or the money, right? And I think it's so important to realize that the real pleasure comes in when you give that story to the reader and they interpret it in their own way.
I didn't see that coming, magical. By the way. Yeah, I thought my joy in writing a book or kind of putting my work out there is going to be about them seeing my internal world. It's also extremely uncomfortable to be seen in that way, especially by the people that know you. I think the most intimidating aspect of publishing my work was that, oh my God, all my friends and everybody I know is going to be psychoanalyzing me.
Yeah, and that happens. A lot of my friends and like my closest people said that now I know you so much better because I read your book.
And it's an extremely uncomfortable
very
feeling.
Uncomfortable.
It's a very uncomfortable
I
feeling.
felt so weird after I heard that. I'm like, no, please don't don't know me, just unread it. I don't want to be this person who's known so much.
Yeah, and isn't it strange that,
Like,
I mean, it's
you
such an
took away all my
uncomfortable...
mystery. Like,
Yeah.
I'm scared you know me now
But it's kind
because
of
of
strange
my
that
work.
there is so much discomfort in people who know you knowing you, but there is so much excitement around people that don't know you in knowing you. You know,
it's
it's
so
a very strange
It is.
thing.
I've not thought about it, but that makes sense. You know, I read this somewhere how writing a book is one of the most intimate experiences, and a reader reading that book is such an intimate experience because it's a one-on-one conversation between the writer and the reader. Any other form of content, and even this, for example, multiple people will be, you know, kind of experiencing your art in one go, but the whole page to reader experience is so intimate.
And it transcends time and place.
It does.
Which is the most beautiful thing about it. But I think that what I did not foresee is how when people read your work and when it strikes a chord in them because they've either experienced something similar or you know, a character that resonates with them, I feel like the way that they make the story their own, I just did not kind of see that coming in terms of how impactful that can be. I mean, it's also like it makes you feel less alone about how it's the same human experience that everybody is kind of going through. You know, you're not really alone in any emotion that you feel through life. Like, there is no solitude in that sense. Like, you're together in
you're
being
ordinary.
alone.
You're ordinary.
Yeah.
I think that's also something I realized
that
from
idea
this.
Of
It's very
connection,
comforting. It's
that
comforting.
idea of connection, right? That I don't know this human being. I don't know this person at all. He's picked up a book off the shelves from some random bookstore in a different part of the country, and him and I, for that duration, are having the same human experience.
United in some way.
Yeah. It's a crazy feeling.
And I think that's the whole concept of art, right? And this is something I talk about in my book also, that art is so magical that ultimately, whatever emotion that you're experiencing, you know that there is a book, a song, a film that's already been created on it, and you're not alone in experiencing this. You know, this emotion has been experienced before, and there's someone who's witnessed it.
But I think the beauty of it really is about the authenticity of it, right? Like, where in your regular day do you get to have a real moment with another person unless you've really built that kind of a connection with somebody, right?
That's
which also takes so much time and effort and vulnerability, which is such a scary thing for people these days. But I think in any art form, I feel like people who are wonderful dancers, they really express themselves so authentically and in such a raw form with their dance. For me, that's been writing. And not that I'm trying to talk to another person necessarily, not that, but it's just my way,
craft.
it's my footprint on the world. Right? Like, it's how I process the world and it's how I give out to the world. Like, that's just how I'm communicating.
I
agree. And I can't do that when I'm maybe just speaking to somebody, you know, and for me, the way that I would write would be my most vulnerable. So yes, no matter how fictionalized an account would be, it is like somebody going through my personal diary. And but when I'm writing commercially, when I'm writing for the anonymous reader, I want it to not be about me expressing myself. I want it to be, you know, just a story that somebody reads. I want my element to be dissolved in the art of it.
I get that. It's hard though. This is something I've read about also, how the artist needs to be separated from the art. It's so important because the artist will always have a bias towards his story, his or her story, right? How much of yourself you pour into your work. I think the true mark of a great artist is how much they can remove themselves from that piece of art and just create it.
And just
from a distance, from an objective lens. And I've struggled with it so much, and so much so to the fact that I think so many readers have come up to me and said that, hey, Vanya from your book is such a representation of you. Or Anisha from your book, is she you? Is she you or not? But I love the mystery of it also, where people are trying to figure out, right? And it's something that people automatically think that your characters will have a part of you, which is, I think, so true. The characters that I build will always reflect some part of me, and I think that's the whole experience of being human also, because you're such a layered person, right? The protagonist of my story, Vanya, has a lot of elements that I resonate with, right? She's a bookish girl, she's obsessed with trying to impress her parents and gain their validation, and she's the academic girly. She has the slight elder daughter syndrome that a lot of Indian girls go through, right? Trying to think like their worth is nothing until they keep achieving, achieving, achieving. And then when that woman finds love, when that woman finds a man who can love her just for herself, that's an experience that is very close to who I am as a person and the experiences I have gone through, right? But at the same time, there's Anisha in the book, who's this slightly unhinged woman who doesn't care about pleasing other people or gaining validation from other people, but in the process she often ends up breaking hearts and not caring about the trail of mess that she leaves behind. While it's observed as cruel sometimes, I think it's also so freeing and liberating that she doesn't care and she's just catering to her heart's desire. But then there's a whole backlog of why she is the person that she is, and her childhood, of what happened with her as a child when she lost her father. I'm sorry for the spoilers for all of those who've not read the book yet. But yeah, I mean, I think there are parts of Anisha in me, there are parts of Vanya in me, there are some parts of Dhruv's struggle, who's the main lead character, that are very close to who I am as a person, right? When it comes to things like your spiritual quest and your quest for truth and doing the right thing. And I can never separate it from who I am. I think the second book that is or is not in the works also has characters that are now reflecting the newer struggles and journeys that I am going through or I've gone through in, say, the last 1 or 2 years. And I don't know how to separate the art from the artist. Maybe you shouldn't completely. I think it's like you'll always be on some part of that spectrum.
Yeah, I mean, circling back to like the darker side of the creative pursuit is, I think one of them, through the process of creating that art, is also, I feel like I would feel extremely vulnerable about the things that mean the most to me, especially because I know that writing is my most vulnerable way of expression. I would steer clear of something that really is extremely meaningful to me. Like, for example, in my novel, I kind of depict this relationship between my character, and her name was Nanki, and a lot of people thought it's after my nickname, which is Nimki, which I go by Nimki a lot more than my real name, which is Niharika. And it wasn't about me at all. Actually, it was because I wanted to depict her relationship with her maternal family being such an important part of her identity, is because that is what in Hindi Nanke ka bolte hain, which is like of your maternal home. And her relationship with her grandfather was supposed to be a really big influence in her life, and it was supposed to kind of losing that relationship was supposed to be the trigger for all the emotional journey that she kind of goes on to. And the reason, a lot of people ask me, like, why wouldn't her parents figure in the novel? And the reason for that is because I knew I had to write about loss. I wanted that relationship or the loss of that relationship to be the catalyst for the journey that she takes after that. And I did not want to deep dive into those emotions in me with regarding her losing her parents. I mean, my parents are such an important part of my life. I knew that to write that entire chapter would have taken me a few months. I mean, that's how long it takes me to write a novel and chapters and everything. And I knew that for that entire duration, I would have to live with those emotions, and I didn't want to. I mean, I lost my grandfather when I was extremely young. It did not hit me at that deeper level to write about it now as an adult. But I didn't want to kind of deep dive into those emotions for that period. So one of the things about the creative process is also that, how deep is too deep, right?
Like how and I think sometimes it's just very difficult also, because you go into those circles of kind of connecting to the character, and then you're living in the head of that character, and then you're experiencing all of that.
You're experiencing those experiences. And I mean, I remember crying.
It's actually dark sometimes.
It is dark sometimes. It takes you into a very dark place, which is why, I mean, I'm like, the period that I was writing the novel, I was completely consumed by that story. I was living that story for that entire duration. And once I was done, my initial reaction was actually relief. I was like so relieved for the story to finally be out of me. It had to be out of me. It was a very rewarding experience that I cherish to this day, but it was extremely tiring. And that's something that I don't think people realize. I did cry when a lot of my...
emotionally uncomfortable.
I cried twice during the writing process, because there were I mean, it was almost crazy, right? Like, these are characters that I have made up. They don't even exist. When it was time for those characters to be written off of the story, it was still like a goodbye. And it was extremely heavy emotionally for me to deal with at that point, because I had lived with those characters for a couple of months by that point. And so, yeah, I mean,
It's difficult.
it's difficult.
Emotionally.
It's a journey. It's an emotional journey. That's one part of the creation process. But another very disillusioning aspect of the whole thing was kind of figuring out the PR game.
Yeah, I was going to ask you the struggles and the challenges, and I think this is one of the main ones even
Yeah.
I faced when we talk about the
mean,
dark side. Talk about it, the dark side.
We've spoken about it. But yeah, I mean, kind of just realizing how much of what you see is
Manufactured.
manufactured.
It's not real.
It's not real. It's not real fame. It's not real credibility. It's
Everything is bought.
your attention is the biggest commodity out there.
I think
And
this
that's
was
something
so-
that people don't realize.
This was very disillusioning for me too, to realize that everything that we see out there is something that's manufactured and created. It's not
Yeah.
authentic. When I got into writing and publishing, and then I also work in marketing, and I work with PR agencies, and I buy media spaces, and I do all this work, and that just has made me such a different person. And I think it's shifted me from a consumer mindset to a slight creator or business mindset, where I think now I realize that anything and everything can be created.
And anything and everything can be bought.
Anything and everything can be bought. I
Yeah.
do not have to really do and achieve all of this. I can just buy it.
Yeah.
Fame can be bought, clicks can be bought, media spaces can be bought, followers can be bought, book sales can be bought, everything can be bought.
And most of the numbers that people are seeing are
Fudged.
bought.
They're
Are
bought.
Fudged. They're bought. And so many of these media houses or publications, or whether it's magazines or whether it's TV news channels or whatever, I've grown up kind of really holding them in high esteem. And, it was always one of those things that, one day I
Yeah,
wish
I'll be there.
I'm there. And it was such a disheartening experience to be
Yeah.
receiving quotes, if you want a 15-minute slot on this channel, like this
Yeah.
is the cost, this is the price you have
Yeah.
to pay. And I mean, it was like,
Credibility is nothing. We just need your money.
you
and
just
that's
need the
so
money, and
disheartening.
it is so disheartening because it takes away the joy of it
Yeah.
entirely, right? Like, because then what is left of it? Like, then what really is real?
It takes the whole angle of achievement out of it, because we
Yes.
grow up thinking that, hey,
It's an achievement.
once we reach there, we would have made it.
Yeah.
But then when you're there, you realize that anybody can reach here.
And it's so
if they have the
manipulated.
money, or if they have the connections
Exactly.
and the means. And that, I think, is just very disheartening, which is why I think I want to circle back to defining what success means to you. Not being on this media channel or not being on this many views, but rather the people, the readers coming up to you and telling you how they've experienced your writing, or when they've experienced your craft and how they connect with you. I think that is the real joy, and the real joy will always come down to people and connection and community. That's
Yeah.
been my biggest learning out of the whole darker side of the experience.
Yeah. Of course, there's a long journey to chart here, and there's a lot to learn. And, it takes a lot of guts to pursue your creative passions,
passion,
right?
very much.
It takes a lot. But I also think that maybe commercializing it entirely is not the best way to do it, because it takes the joy out of it. It makes you have to play to the gallery, and then you're just creating a product that will sell eventually.
Yeah.
That ends up happening.
That's what I'm saying. In the end, it all comes down to business. You
Yeah.
can buy everything. You have to see it as a product.
Yeah.
Instead of art, you have to see it as a product that will cater to a certain set of audiences. How do you create that product? Where do you sell it? What are the channels? It's purely business.
Yeah.
And I think that has been the darker and,
Yeah, there's a lot
slightly
more that could be said about it,
uncomfortable.
but yeah, without giving any names here.
I
Keeping
want
it
the
really
names now.
after the podcast.
Once the cameras are not rolling anymore.
Yes, exactly. But I think we can just give it up to the listeners, and we'd love to know what your challenges have been, whether you would ever want to take the plunge and want to pursue your creative passions, what your perceived challenges are.
we'd be happy to take questions also.
Yes.
Given we have taken the plunge and it's
Yeah.
been semi-rewarding, semi-challenging. I think we have a lot of tea and wisdom to spill, and we'd be happy to do that.
Happy to do that. We also have our Instagrams linked in the bio below. Do check it out. And until then, this is me, Niharika.
And Simran.
And we're signing off from The Girls Who Think, the podcast.
Thank you.